Hey everyone, welcome to PunkCast. My name is William Maxwell. I'm a student of Web3 and the owner of Punk7527. CryptoPunks are 10,000 uniquely generated characters stored permanently on the Ethereum blockchain. No punk is the same. This is a show dedicated to celebrating the punks behind the punk. My hope for this podcast is that we capture the essence of the punk culture, elevate the brand and the individual behind the punk. One last thing. Projects discussed on the show is not financial advice. Crypto and NFTs are a volatile and risky asset class. Please always do your own research. Other than that, let's go. Hey everyone, welcome back to PunkCast. Today we've got a special punk, number 7642. He's a 2 Atty with messy bed hair and nerd glasses. He's a shark at Punksten, a founder at V3 Consulting, which is a consultancy helping creators, startups, and brands thrive in Web3. Please welcome the talented Valko to the show. Valko, how are you?
Hey, everybody. I'm doing well. Very excited to be here with Maxwell on the show. This is my very first podcast, so looking forward to it. Excited to share some of my stories.
Awesome. Glad to sort of have you, mate. I had my first podcast. Well, basically the one that we released earlier during the week was my first podcast with Joshua. So that was a bit of a scary and daunting task, but a little bit easier, I think, for you to be on the podcast, I think. Maybe we could start off with just a simple question. How did you come up with Valko? Like, does Valko have a meaning behind it in terms of your anonymous name or doc's name?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I mean, I've always been kind of fascinated with like names, and a lot of the top brands out there in the world have really short names, often like ending in vowels. And so I knew that when I came up with my name and my pseudonym, that it had to be something short, and that sounded like cool and badass to me. And Valko was just kind of a sound that I came up with. I've always liked the letter V. After I came up with the word, I checked to see if the ENS domain was available, and it was. And I bought it, registered it for 30 years, I want to say. And turns out it means wolf in Bulgarian. So I'm like the wolf, the wolf of Web3, at least in Bulgarian words.
Beautiful. And just out of curiosity, why did you, I guess, decide to stay anonymous in the space?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of just fun. I think generally it's fun to wear a mask. You know, Halloween's a really fun time of year. You know, it's October now, and putting on a mask and you know, hiding your real identity and being someone else for a night can be really fun. But you know, ultimately, I think you sort of start to have, especially initially when the pseudonym is young, you have less strings attached, so you can sort of get down to your like raw and true self. You can interact and represent and express yourself and engage online in a way that is truly you, because you don't have to be worried about what people kind of in the real world think about you IRL. But the catch-22 is, you know, eventually over time your pseudonym will gain notoriety and an audience and a following, and eventually those things do become anchors of their own regard. But at the end of the day, like I think it's beautiful when you find people that are willing to be like unapologetically themselves. And I think pseudonyms are a great way to kind of spread that cheer around the internet.
I mean, that's awesome. And I can sort of see that as well, right? I think I've decided to go anonymous for that particular reason. I could just experiment on Twitter, shit posts, write thoughts, whatever it is, and just experiment. Whereas I think if your name's tied to, you know, a certain brand in real life, you know, a company or a university that you went to, I think you've got an obligation to be, you know, reasonably conservative in what you say. So totally relate to that.
Yeah,
and then
absolutely, there's a security element to it as well. You know, you don't want people to find the IRL target with all the JPEGs.
Exactly.
At least for the paranoid ones of us out there.
Well, especially high-priced punks, right? So for sure. And then maybe just you know, if you could just give us a brief introduction to yourself and your background and how you sort of found yourself in Web3.
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up in a big family, one of six kids, five sisters, and our mom was really intense and disciplined with us, and we all grew up playing
Where
instruments
where
along
where
with a bajillion. Go
where
ahead.
are you in the family?
Oh, I'm the second oldest, so I've four younger sisters and one older sisters or sister.
It's I just sorry, I had to jump in there because I actually come from a family of six as well, and I'm the youngest of six, and you don't
Uh,
come across too many families with six kids, right? So awesome.
yeah. Oh man, it's the best thing ever. I attribute a lot of my character and my success to coming from a big family, and it's something I hope to have one day too.
Yeah, awesome.
But yeah, I grew up in a big family, playing the violin. Started at the age of 3. Um, Around the time when I was 15, I left the house to go to boarding school. I toured a bunch of really awesome high schools, and only one of them was a boarding school. And when I toured the all boys dorm, I was like, "Wow, this is so cool! I can have brothers for the first time. This is cool." So I went there, got into sports for the first time, kept up my violin practice, and then ultimately, when college came around, I got into Berklee College of Music on a scholarship and decided to go there to study sound design for video games and music business. So I graduated there with a double bachelor's and a minor in audio implementation for video games. Tried to get a job at Sonos at the time. I didn't get the job. It was a little bit disheartening. But I did meet this really interesting character starting a venture capital brokerage firm. So rather than having a fund where we manage, whatever, $100 million, we would bring deals to investors on a direct deal basis. So that really kicked off my career in venture capital. So I did that for about 8 years, got my Series 7, Series 24, and Series 63. So I'm very plugged into the securities world, and really learned that it was something I didn't like. I didn't like this idea of an accredited investor being somebody who has a net worth or income over a certain threshold, and that being the measure of who is sophisticated enough to invest in certain asset classes. It was basically saying like, if you're rich, you're smart, and therefore you can have more investment options. And that really pissed me off. And so that combined with a lot of my background in music business, at least academically, really attracted me to Web3 because I saw the freedom it was going to not just bring the people from an investment angle, but I also saw a lot of the benefits it could provide a creator economy like musicians, but just a broader creator economy as well. So I was in venture capital for 8 years in mixed capacities as a venture capital broker, helping manage a large Fortune 500 company, like an oil and gas company's VC fund. And then I switched to crypto full time, where I was chief of staff at Yat Labs and Tari Labs for about a year and a half when I decided it was time to build my own thing, which brings me here.
Awesome. Um, what was Yat Labs and what was the other company you mentioned? The Web3 companies? What were
Yeah,
they
so
doing?
there's Yat Labs, YAT, and Tari Labs, TARI. They're sort of like brother and sister companies, same founders, same team, same engineers, whole nine yards. Tari Labs was building its own blockchain. So it's a layer one that's built in Rust, which is a very high performance, but notoriously hard to develop for um, kind of language. And the whole angle on Tari was like, we believe that there needed to be a private by default layer one that supported smart contracts. So sort of like as Monero is to Bitcoin, Tari was to Ethereum. We wanted something that wasn't just private by default, which we viewed to be very important, but we also wanted something that was more scalable than Ethereum, which like we all know the problems with Ethereum scalability, which are being addressed right now. But yeah, that was Tari. One of the founders was the ex lead maintainer of Monero, so it's a really well funded, well resourced, well staffed startup. And within that, we had another company called Yat, which is a emoji based self sovereign identity for Web3. So think of it as something like an ENS or an unstoppable domains type thing. Like on the surface, it's like those things. It serves as like a URL and like a link in bio and like a link tree and all that jazz. But yeah, it was purely emoji based. And yet also had a much greater focus on sort of onboarding the normies via like really powerful storytelling, quality. I mean, we're talking like top tier, best in class UI and UX. And so, we onboarded tens and tens and tens of thousands of new users to Web3 with this neat little emoji-based identity, and that was that included people like Paris Hilton, Steve Cohen, Lil Wayne, hot shots, but it also included anybody with $4. And so it was a really amazing startup to be a part of, really bright team. And what I liked a lot was we successfully brought in a lot of new users to Web3, which is ultimately what I'm here for.
That's awesome, mate. I do remember that. I actually bought a couple Yats. I've just pulled it up now. I got the cool orange cap. So the cool was the smiley face with the sunglasses.
Yeah.
But that's really awesome. Do you know what's going on with Yat at the moment? Are they still going strong?
Oh yeah. The team is growing, and they're constantly kind of refining and upgrading the product. So I think historically a lot of the focus was on bringing utility to the identity, which is still something that matters. Yats are essentially primary domains in Opera browser. So if you just type the emoji in the URL, it automatically resolves to that Yat owner's page or redirects to where they want, which is really cool. Anywhere in the Opera web browser that you highlight a string of emojis, like if it's owned by that person, it'll say go to Yat. So if you own the single emoji heart, theoretically nobody does, you would own on Opera that namespace across the entire internet. So it's really,
cool.
really powerful. It's an amazing integration. There's also integrations with crypto wallets, like similar to ENS and MetaMask's integration, where you can send money to Valko.eth with Cake Wallet, My Monero Wallet, Blockchain.com Wallet, which has a whole bunch of users. You can send money using Yats. But beyond that, they're building a really cool product right now called Yat Pods. So rather than being fully reliant on outside integrations, they're sort of taking fate into their own hands and building this really cool social product that helps people and groups sort of collect together and help people tell their on-chain stories. Because just owning an NFT or not, and when you bought it, that's kind of like a surface level story. But there's so many more stories beneath the surface of bravery and riches and ruin and cowardice that, like, unless you're an expert on chain digging and on Etherscan, like, these stories are hard to tell. So the new product that Yat's working on is very much about what are these mutually shared assets that people have, and what are their on-chain stories, and how can we help them connect and tell these stories.
That's awesome, mate. And just want to go back a little bit, because I'm looking at this Twitter post, and as you were sort of going through your background, get the fact that you moved out early age, and you come from a really unique background in music, which I don't think we find too often in Web3. But I think I'm looking at point number 5 here. You've got Mongolian throat singer. Is that real, or?
Yeah, it's real. I mean, we sat around in college and watched all sorts of weird YouTube videos. Like, people would come over, bring a bottle of whiskey, and someone would start airplaying something, and the night would just devolve into like complete nonsense. But one thing we always came back to was Mongolian throat singing. We thought it was like so fascinating. People sound like a didgeridoo, and when done right, you can actually sing 2 notes at once. It's super fascinating. We always thought, like, you have to be of a certain genetic pool to be able to do this thing. Like, only few are capable, but like, lo and behold, like, all 10 of us learned how to do it. And I'll do a little demo for you. It might sound weird on the mic, but it sounds kind of like this.
Please do. That is awesome.
Yeah. So this wasn't like 12 truths and a lie, or 11 truths and a lie. That is very much a real party trick I've got.
I love it. Yeah, you're right. It does actually sound like a didgeridoo, right? Mate, you've got a really rich and sort of exciting background here, and maybe you could sort of tell us about your foray into NFTs then? I mean, was it through Yat and that sort of space when you bought your first NFT? Like, what was that like?
Yeah. Well, I've been in the NFT space for a long time. So I originally got involved in Bitcoin when I was in like high school, like in the very early days of Bitcoin. So dating myself a little bit there.
Mm.
And we were buying like illicit things online, as high schoolers do. And so I saw Bitcoin kind of come to the fold. I saw the power of it, not just as like a superior form of like money and store of value, but as something you could actually use to buy things online. And then enter college, I saw this whole ICO and shitcoin era, and I didn't really have any interest in that because that's on the speculative and gambling side of the spectrum that I've never been a fan of. But when NFTs enter the fold, I thought it was really interesting. So Berkeley's mascot is Mingus the cat. We're a music school. We have no sports teams, but our mascot is a cat, and of course, cats are really powerful internet memes. And I'm a big time, long time Redditor, and so when I saw the headlines, and I was a Bitcoin maximalist at this point in my life, and Ethereum to me was like equivalent to Litecoin. It was kind of just like this another chain out there that had some legitimacy but wasn't fully legit. And so when I saw this headline saying CryptoKitties breaks the Ethereum blockchain, like I just like peed my pants. I thought it was the funniest thing ever. I was like, here we go, like the shit coin's in for us breaking, like Bitcoin's the best. And so at that point in time, I was like, I have to get some of the cats. So in December 5th, 2017, and this is one of my on-chain stories. December 5th, 2017, I bought two CryptoKitties and two CryptoPunks. And I found the kitties first, was on Reddit, bopping around, and quickly I was pointed to, I think it was like a CryptoPunk specific subreddit. And I was like, wow, these things look way cooler. And so I went ahead and purchased my two punks. I didn't mint them, but I got them in 2017 before the dawn of the ERC 721 standard. And I held them every day since. I never got rid of them.
So that's still super early. What was your entry price? So you got in December 17, right?
Yeah, I was like 0.13 and 0.14 ETH. I mean, my cost basis for my punks is like cumulatively like $300 USD.
Wow. And is that the one that you're sporting today? Number, is it 7642?
No, so actually, when I said I didn't get rid of them, I should correct myself. So I did take the two I originally had, and I sort of sold them and turned them into five.
Mm.
So I bought two hoodie punks originally,
Wow.
and I sold them sort of like in 2020 or 2021, like many years later, but before this stuff really took off. And one of
Yeah.
them I sold for 5 ETH. And of course, hoodie punks are worth like way more now. Like the floor for hoodie punks is like 200 ETH. But I sold one of my hoodie punks for 5 ETH and used that money to buy the one I have now, 7642, which really spoke to me. I thought it was such a clean punk. Kind of looks like me. And it just has this cool, like high IQ, smarty pants vibe. It always reminded me of L and the main character Light Yagami in Death Note. I don't know if you watched that anime, but
No.
they're both these like really brilliant characters with glasses that like occasionally catch the light and flicker at you, and that's what kind of spoke to me about these punks. So I turned two punks into five, but I've been in the punk collection um, without skipping a day since December 5th, 2017.
That's amazing. And that's super early, so I'm super jealous there. But so maybe if you can take us back to that time, because I'm always really curious in terms of what it was like back then. How did you come across CryptoKitties and then obviously into CryptoPunks that compelled you to take it to the next step? Because I know a lot of people hear about it, but they don't really take the next step to actually action it.
Yeah, I mean, with CryptoKitties, it was kind of just like I'm on the internet, I'm on Reddit, I'm reading tech forums, all sorts of things, and so the CryptoKitties breaks the Ethereum blockchain. Like if you were remotely in crypto, or even if you weren't exposed to crypto, like financially, but sort of lurked around those forums, like you saw this headline, and so I thought it was absolutely funny. I've always appreciated like the power of the cat meme on the internet. And so I saw that and I was like, you know what? Screw it. Like, I'm going to buy some of these things and I'm going to start breeding them. I thought it was so funny that you could breed your cats or you could have people pay you money to breed with your cat. I was like, pimp out my cats, like cool. So that was just like fun from a gamer's perspective. And then the punks, I just thought they looked cool, and I really wanted to have one just like as an experiment on the blockchain. Like it was my first time getting my own self custody wallet, and buying like an NFT. So it was really just an experiment, but very quickly these punks became like an identity for me. I was rocking a punk as a PFP that day in 2017. And so I think whether I was able to articulate it or not, I saw the value of these things as a sort of new identity for a new face for your digital identity. And that's what initially attracted me. And then I would say like my conviction really grew over time. Like, every day I turned away massive profits to stay in the collection. And I think my conviction started to come really from realizing like, one, oh shit, CryptoPunks really ignited this movement. They're the first like 10K PFP collection. And at the time, we all thought it might have been the first NFT. So I knew it had historical significance. So that was a big anchor in my conviction over time. But also it was the community. Like I started to see some like really bright, really deeply intellectual folks entering the CryptoPunk community. And it was like a club I knew I wanted to be a part of for life. And so like I'll never sell Punk7642. I will literally never sell that thing. It's going to be passed down to like my kin.
Awesome. And there's a lot of things to sort of unpack there as well. One thing I wanted to ask you was it quite common for people to use their CryptoPunk as the identity play back then? Because I'm assuming Twitter and Discord were basically just starting out. Was there a lot? I mean, even on Reddit, right? Did Reddit have a profile picture identity play there as well? Or?
Reddit, you have to be one of those little aliens, and you can change the way the alien looks, kind of like in a video game. Change its accessories, whatever, its shirt, its pants. On Reddit, you can't have your own custom PFP. But I don't remember what day the Punk Discord started or when I joined it. And I imagine that was probably the place where punk PFPs started, because you were in a community with your fellow punks and you wanted to wear your little punk mask. The Twitter community, it took me kind of years to find it. Like I was solo rocking my punk PFP on Twitter just because I thought it was cool. This hoodie guy with a VR headset really looked like a cyberpunk of sorts. I even imported him into Microsoft Paint and created like a little torso and body for him. But yeah, I don't know. Like it's kind of just like blurred with history. Like at some point, like it just kind of became like when crypto Twitter blossomed, like that's when NFT PFPs started like taking the limelight, taking the stage.
Booming. Yeah, no, cool. And
so who would be good to ask about that is Shuli. Shuli would know. She's like the OG creator of our Discord.
Yeah, I think I'll get her on the show soon. So yeah, definitely I'll ask her then as well. And when you said you started, engaging with the community, like what was that like? Like what sort of channels, and was it mostly Reddit? Was there a Reddit CryptoPunk channel there before Discord happened, or?
Yeah, CryptoPunk. There was a Reddit that's what initially turned me on to punks, but I don't remember it being active, or if it was, I wasn't active in it. It was just sort of how I initially discovered the collection, as something adjacent to CryptoKitties, and then it very quickly became like Discord and Twitter, and so I think my early engagements with the community were it was just kind of like chatting. There were newcomers coming into the project. It was before all this hype, so there actually wasn't like a whole lot to talk about, and I don't think there were a whole lot of people with like crazy conviction. Like I don't think anyone foresaw like where we are today. Maybe few people did, but yeah, there wasn't a whole lot of things to talk about. And then when the NFT bull run came, I observed like a lot of the punks. Initially we're talking about other projects coming up, trying to figure out which ones were going to be hot, which ones were going to be not. But very quickly, I think the punks became very indifferent to these new projects. They were like, "This is all noise. Punks are the only things that matter." which led a lot of us to miss out on like stuff like Bored Apes that actually sort of defied the odds. But yeah, a lot of punks sort of became numb to all the noise and then went out and started building. So for a long
Mm.
time, I felt the punk community was actually a little dormant because they were contributing elsewhere in the space. But now there's such a strong community in that Discord, people talking every day, new awesome people joining. I mean, I really do think it's the best club on the internet.
Absolutely. Um, Man, that's super fascinating to go back that far. And I think what about you? Like when you were going through that process as well. I mean, was the concept of digital ownership of pictures or digital property rights automatically make sense to you back then, or did that take you a bit of time to sort of digest? I think.
Yeah, I mean, look, I always understood digital ownership with regards to like money and Bitcoin. And so it wasn't a huge leap for me to like understand that with regards to like a unique digital asset. And somebody, my background as a gamer, helped me too, right? I played a lot of RuneScape.
Mm,
I owned a lot of rare items in RuneScape and other video games and MMORPGs. The idea of owning like a unique digital item was not very far fetched for me.
yeah.
And I think the one thing that a lot of my friends challenged me on, the people calling me crazy all along the way, were like, what do you really own? Like the image isn't really on the blockchain, blah, blah, blah. They're just pointers.
Mm,
And, for a vast majority of collections, that's true. But as we know, like CryptoPunks had a really innovative like method where they took the composite image of all the punks, they ran it through the SHA-256 like encryption algorithm, and they took the hash and they put that on chain. So there's some semblance of like what the images are on chain, and it's not like more recently they actually put the images on chain, like all the RGB color data. But that was something that was powerful to me too. Was like there being something more than just a pointer. Whereas like today you look at a lot of projects, it's just a pointer, sometimes pointing to a centralized server that could be fully changed at any point in time, like an Amazon or a Google or a Microsoft server. Or you have, the middle ground of like it's on IPFS, which is like supposed to be immutable, but it's obviously not a blockchain. So
mm,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah, no, I didn't really appreciate, I guess, the on-chain provenance of that until a little bit later in, I guess, my NFT journey. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely right. I don't think many people coming into the space really sort of understand that difference as well between IPFS and actually real on-chain,
Right.
which is a really special feature of CryptoPunks as well. Man, so that's a really cool sort of foundation and sort of finding your way into CryptoPunks. And then you sort of did talk about it a little bit, but maybe we can go a little bit deeper into why did this particular punk that you have now actually resonate with you the most? You said that it was I think it was that was it an old cartoon or something like that?
Yeah, the glasses reminded me of some of my favorite characters from the anime Death Note, but I would say like
Okay, okay.
glasses kind of glinting and glistening in the sunlight is a kind of common anime trait. And I've watched a whole lot of anime, so I saw these glasses and immediately spoke to me like high IQ. And I wanted my face online to be of somebody who was smart. I wanted to talk about cool ideas, not things and people necessarily. And so that's what originally attracted me to it. And it's just clean. Like I liked punks that were very clean and look like they could be somebody IRL. Like I never personally was drawn to some of the crazy hair punks or the ones with the
Nice.
eyeshadow. Like nothing against those punks. Like I think all punks are awesome. A punk's a punk. But personally for me, I really was drawn to the clean punks that didn't have a whole lot going on.
Awesome. And then yeah, so man, like so tell us like what are you working on now, and I guess what are you sort of finding really interesting in this space?
Yeah, so I'm working on my own consulting practice. So I've landed a few clients, and really I'm helping creators, startups, small brands, big brands launch themselves and thrive into Web3. So helping people with NFT drops, tokenomics, sort of how they structure their smart contracts, helping them maybe come up with like how their DAO will be structured, governance models for their DAO, how they're going to build their product or their DApp, or for some projects, like what is their like strategy to even like before they start building, like what's their kind of go to market and entrance strategy to take a Web 2 brand and move it into Web 3 in a way that's not just like a cash grab, but something that's actually organic and sustainable. So kind of all over the board right now, but really the overarching mission is how can I bring Web 3 to the masses? And so really just looking for the most fun, most enjoyable, cool projects with cool people.
Nice. And just out of curiosity as well, like what sort of channels are you using to try and source business? Because I've had a look on, because I was thinking something similar as well, but I just sort of felt Web 2 is just really hard to communicate effectively with them. Maybe that's my sort of communication style. But I was just on LinkedIn and I was having a look through, I guess, some of the feeds there and how they talk about Web3 and crypto and blockchains. I guess the key things always keep popping up. It's like metaverse, digital sort of avatars, fashion, and it just feels like it's a lot of buzzwords, and a lot of the people that are giving advice feel like they're not really down in the weeds as we are in some ways. And so when you talk about those elements, which are really important in my mind about launching a project around tokenomics, around, fair launch and all those other bits and pieces, they basically signal a lot of things about the project whereby a lot of people coming in from Web 2 are probably approaching it top down. And I think they miss on some of the nuances. And I think it's a massive missed opportunity. So, I definitely think that there's a gap there for some consulting work.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I mean, like I use Twitter to focus on like the DAOs and kind of crypto native startups from a business development standpoint. And LinkedIn's really powerful for finding some of the non-crypto native creators or especially like bigger brands. And then of course, like typical networking, going to events and referrals can take you a long way. I always take the approach of like trying to provide value first, like without like expectation of anything in return. Because I think if you provide value, then like good things will generally come to you. And sure, that means sometimes you do something for free, or it might feel like you wasted your time. But I really feel like there's like an education and everything. And a lot of people that I've a year ago hopped on calls with, sometimes for an hour or three, just to help them work through something. Like a lot of those guys have come back to me as clients themselves or referred friends as a client. So I really take things from that perspective, really try to like explore their ideas with them, poke holes in them, make sure it's really making meaningful impact and progress towards whatever their company's objectives are. And then eventually that usually will like, lead to some sort of like trial period, like a consulting trial period, at which point, like after a month, we both know like whether there's real value in us working together or not. And so far that's been 100% conversion rate, but yeah, it's pretty fun.
No, it is. And no, I'm excited for you too, man. And when you're sort of going through, I guess, this journey, this process, like what are you sort of seeing some consistent friction areas or barriers that you come across, whether it's sort of Web3 clients or Web 2 clients coming across into Web 3?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people don't actually understand the paradigm shift that's happening with our infrastructure here, like the fundamental differences between Web 2 infra and Web 3 infra. A lot of people look at crypto and they just sort of see money bags, frankly. And a lot of people think that crypto and blockchain and whatever, making something a DAO, they really view it as this like magic bullet to um, the business model side of the equation. But I always tell them, like, look, this is just like a new medium to transact. It's a new medium for art. DAOs are just like an on-chain LLC, effectively. Like none of these things are magic bullets for you as a creator or a company. Like if you don't put out good, valuable content or proper services, like blockchain isn't going to be your saving grace. So that's something I always have to sort of like beat through their heads initially and get them to stop seeing the money bags. Cause like a lot of them say they want to build organic, sustainable things, but initially a lot of their ideas are very cash grabby. It's like sell this PFP, collect the money, and it's like, and then what? And there's oftentimes not a then what. And I think it's still a big problem that even the most deeply crypto native folks are struggling to solve. Like, look around. How many projects actually have a sustainable recurring revenue model that's not just royalties, right? It's very few. I mean, the one that always comes to mind for me is Nouns. Like they sell a noun every day for like 50 to 60 Ethereum. And I think it's a really good model that they have to keep their project well funded for now and like arguably forevermore. But yeah, I think that's the struggle is like, how do you come in and create something sustainable? And how do you get the clients to really think that way versus being focused on like short-term cash grabs? Because Web3 has always been like the promised land for creators. Like they think like, oh, finally, like royalties are going to be guaranteed and save the day. And we're all going to be able to finally make money selling music, selling art, selling content. But at the end of the day, like there's a power law distribution. And in the world of creators, only some creators make it and many don't. And Web3 is not going to change that, in my opinion. It might create tighter alignment of incentives between fans and creators. It might create stronger communities that are like can't be deplatformed or canceled, right? There's a direct connection and on-chain social graph between these creators and their fans. But like what these creators are doing at the end of the day, it's still the same stuff. So if they're not providing value on like a recurring basis, then like blockchain's not going to save the day for them. And so I think that's been like the real struggle. It's kind of like the simple things, like what are you guys actually doing? What are you actually trying to achieve, and what value are you providing to your community? And not an audience, but like a community, right? So yeah.
Yeah, there's a couple of things that you said there that is really interesting. I think, definitely the cash grabby piece. I think that's a really difficult one to unwind if you're coming from Web 2, right? You come from a world where companies and centralization and your primary purpose is to extract profits. And moving to sort of Web 3, it's like, well, it's not so much about transactions anymore. You've got an opportunity to build and accrue attention for the long term through communities. And if you can accrue and attract attention for the long term, then there's different ways to monetize that. And I sort of feel like a lot of the Web2 companies that are coming in are really struggling with this concept of transactional versus a long-term type play.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure how we sort of get around that, right? Because I think it's just naturally sort of embedded and wired into us. But man, like it sounds like a really interesting place to sort of be, and I think we need to start from somewhere, right? So it's great to sort of see that people like you with big brains and the experience to sort of guide these businesses through. Cool. So, right, and then what's sort of next for you? Then you're just going to continue pushing consulting and for the meantime.
Yeah, I'm just, it's so fun to work on all these different projects. And it's also such a relief to really be in charge of my own time. I've had a lot more time to spend with my family and my friends and traveling. I'm not working 80 hours a week anymore. I'm working much more normal hours and everything's on my own time. So I think I'm going to keep this up for a while, but I definitely have a whole lot of, I can call myself an entrepreneur because I started my own little consulting practice, fine. But I really admire people who have gone out and built like, big startups, big products. And I haven't had like an idea that has motivated me to like really take the leap of faith and go all in on. But I think as soon as I have some interesting value proposition or problem to like really chew on, that I would love to start my own company at some point. And I definitely view that as probably something in the Web3 space. Although I am also very passionate about broader just investing, like helping people reach financial independence, helping people like the Robinhood degens actually like invest with purpose. So we'll see.
Awesome.
But I don't think it's out of the question in the next 2 years that I either join another startup team or start one of my own.
Awesome. Mate, and then just digressing a little bit, I'm just looking at your Looks Rare wallet because I can't access the OpenSea one for at the moment. But um, just having a look at your collection here, you've got an interesting collection, mostly CryptoPunks, Cryptodes, and some art blocks in here. But just throwing a broad question out there for you, like, what do you like collecting the most, and I guess more importantly, why do you collect?
Yeah. Yeah. So my bag right now, I don't really like, I'm kind of a tortoise in this space. Like, I don't really move or do things that much. Like, I have like pretty high conviction around like I'd say historical NFTs. I own punks, I own V1 punks, I own Meebits, I own some Genesis rocks, some Cryptodes, and some of the identity stuff like ENS, Yats, the more recently found Lineage .og ones. I have some art blocks, and then I've supported some punk native projects. So like I'd say for the most part, like if it's not historical and I got into it, it's probably because I'm supporting my friends. Um, Otherwise, I really like any new money I accumulate or profits, like I'm going to be buying more punks with that. That's sort of like my highest conviction asset in this entire space. And I think anything else, like, I wouldn't be comfortable going into a coma for 10 years holding anything else besides punks or like autoglyphs. So, and that's kind of the lens I take is like buy it, set it, forget it. Like if you're trying to time the market, you're probably just gambling. So why bother? Just, the punks are, in my opinion, like in the stock world, the S&P is like the benchmark to beat. If you're an active fund manager and you can beat the S&P, then good on you. Most people can't, so they should just buy and hold the S&P. And in crypto, I'd say the benchmark is very much Bitcoin. If you can beat the hodl net of your time and net of your taxes, then good on you. Most people can't. They're just gambling. And then in the NFT world, I really think like if you can beat punks over time, net of your time, however you value that, and net of your increased tax obligation, right? Because when you trade, you pay more taxes than just holding. If you can beat punks, then good on you. And for me, I just have this kind of general philosophy like you can try to beat the index, but over 10 to 20 to 30 years, very, very, very few people are able to do that. Even the top hedge fund managers are not able to consistently beat the market. So for me in NFT land, my whole thing is just dollar cost average and accumulate punks, which you can do. Like if you're bullish on NFTs, my opinion, and obviously I have bag bias here, but I tell this to my mom and my sisters and my loved ones and my friends. If you're bullish on NFTs and you do not have exposure to punks, I have no idea what you're doing. And that's not to say, oh, you need to be rich to get a punk. Like, no, go to NFTX, deploy $1 to get punk exposure. Now that probably wouldn't be optimal because of gas fees, but I mean, you get the idea. Like you can dollar cost average punks the same way you can dollar cost average Bitcoin.
And so, just going back on that, then what's your underlying thesis with punks? Then, why do you have so much conviction into it? Like you sort of mentioned historical, but it'd be good to hear from you in terms of why.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say like first and foremost, I think the community is amazing. So like there is real time present value in being in the community. I've met so many amazing people that are doing so many awesome things that have just had a positive like personal effect on my life, let alone a business and professional effect on my life. So I'd say like that alone, like when you buy a punk, you're in a community of awesome people. It's kind of the same as if you go and join Soho House or some other members only club. You're in a club of like elite people by some measure of eliteness, and that's cool. But for the long term, like I at the end of the day, like every 10K PFP project, in my opinion, is a derivative work of punks. And it might not be a direct, like, you know, soul punks or something that has punks in the name or visually looks like punks. But the idea is like the very first 10,000 generative profile picture project or NFT was punks. And
Mhm.
the entire space caught fire with this idea of 10K PFPs. So it really is the thing. Punk's defined a new medium, and it's not just to say they defined the 10K PFP medium. Like the ERC 721 standard itself was built off of the innovations that CryptoPunks made on the fungible ERC 20 contract. So when you like look at those two things together, like I think history and when NFTs like take over the world, we will look back as punks as the thing that sparked the movement. And sure, they weren't the very first NFT, right? There are NFTs that predate punks, but they were the NFT that inspired the 10K PF movement that lit fire to the space, and they were the NFT that inspired the ERC 721 NFT token standard. And I think those two things are very important to point out. And then I'd say the third thing is like it's a very decentralized project. It's not dependent on the centralized efforts of some royalty funded hype machine. Like punks just are. The Discord itself is run by the community. Like punks don't need any utility other than the art and the community itself. So there's no risk of those things like crumbling and fading away. Like those things will always be there. They're very robust and reliable. We don't know if like all these other NFT projects, founders and marketing machines and Twitter accounts are going to be there for the long term. They're not like truly decentralized, in my opinion. And so I view punks as a project that not just pioneered the space and brought popularity to a new medium for art and digital assets, but I also just view it as this very robust, reliable, run by the people project, which I think is super fascinating.
Absolutely. Mate, you've just got me even more bullish on punks. I need to stack those chips. And mate, so that's a really good take as well, and I agree with all of them, and I think couldn't agree more strongly with, I guess, the provenance and the 10K provenance piece, and I keep saying this all the time, is everything that is a 10K PFP is in some ways a derivative of CryptoPunks. I think the concept of identity is just such a huge piece to sort of unlock, right? And there were NFTs that came before CryptoPunks, but CryptoPunks were the ones that did the PFP, the identity play. I think that's the one that's really driving a lot of the movement going forward.
And yeah, and on like a more micro level, like you can look at attributes and see the provenance back to punk. Like 3D glasses have existed in the world for a long time, but punks brought 3D glasses, like the meme, to the NFT space. Punks brought this idea of like aliens, apes, zombies. Like these things have all existed.
Yeah,
hoodies, even exactly. And so
caps, yeah.
You look across all these other NFT projects, when they have those traits, it's really an homage to punks, especially when it's a rare trait in punks and it also happens to be a rare trait in their collection. Like that is such a strong collection of punks. I mean, look at Bored Ape Yacht Club, arguably the most successful NFT project in the space right now. They're apes, right? Like maybe I'm going out on a limb here, but like I view that as something that was very much inspired by the apes as a type in CryptoPunks. And if you look at all the individual attributes of Bored Apes, a lot of them pay reference and homage back to punks.
Absolutely. I wonder if this is going to cause a bit of a shitstorm when we post some of your quotes here with the Bored Ape community. But let's try that out.
Yeah, well, I don't view it as like tribal warfare. Maybe before the Yuga acquisition it was, but we are bound by blood now.
Exactly. It was kind of interesting when you were talking a little bit before about when Bored Apes came on the scene. CryptoPunks was in some ways a little bit dismissive of the emerging Bored Apes, and it's been quite a telling story to date. But I sort of feel like that's sort of what's happening with the Bitcoin maxis at the moment.
With Ethereum,
yeah, and I hope and I hope I manage to keep a bit more of an open mind as we sort of go through. But it's hard, right? I think when you're just so entrenched with history and CryptoPunks and how much you sort of appreciate the collection and what it is, it's hard to sort of move off it.
Totally. I think it's easy for people to focus on their missed opportunities. Like I can sit here all day long and say, dang, because I was such a punk maxi and didn't believe in all these silly animal PFP projects that I ignored because they were noise, because I had that mentality, I missed out on Bored Apes. But what if I didn't have that mentality? How much money would I have lost to all these other projects, right? Like, so I don't know. I'm happy to have my punks. I want to keep buying punks. I very much like denominate my like NFT worth in punks.
Makes sense. Right. And then if you reflect back on your, I guess, your NFT trading history or your NFT sort of experience, is there any single point that you would classify as your best win or moment in NFTs?
I mean, I think the biggest win is definitely like buying my punk in 2017 and like never exiting the collection, like staying exposed to the punk collection. I traded up within it. You know, I turned two hoodies into five beautifully clean punks that I love with all my heart, and I wouldn't change that for the world. That's probably the biggest win of all. The next big win I would say is I do have my V1 um, pair for my main punk. So I have the complete set for Punk 7642, which
Yeah.
I'm really pumped about. I had to pay a little bit of an arm and a leg for that. I think I paid like 20 ETH for the
Oh
V1
wow.
Punk, which was around a peak for the V1 Punks. So I kind of bought the top on that, but
Yeah.
I really have no regrets. Like there are a few people who have their complete sets, and I'm really proud to be a part of that community, especially as someone who, I had to kind of buy my way into that. I didn't mint my punk, so I didn't. The people who minted their V1 punks were airdropped their equivalent V2, if we want to call it that, punk, and so those guys kind of had those their sets off the
Mm.
bat. But I came in, obviously bought my crypto punk on the secondary market, and the V1 was just out there in the world. And 5 years later, I was able to catch it, and super pumped about that. And my third biggest win, I would say, is Genesis rocks. I bought, or actually, I got gifted a Genesis rock for free, and I ended up selling it to Gary Vaynerchuk for 20 Ethereum, which was like $60,000 at the time. And it broke headlines, like it was on Mashable. There's a Mashable article saying like Logan Paul spends $150,000 on an NFT rock, and the article like quotes a really cool thread I wrote on the Genesis rock movement, and I mean that was a really fun time to be
That was
alive.
cool. I got to dig that one up. Actually, I'm interested. I do remember that sort of phase. It was a bit of a super hype cycle phase at one. People buying rocks, and then
Yeah.
just actually one question I wanted to ask you. I mean, what's your take on the V1s? I know they've been a little bit controversial coming into the space, but what's your sort of take on them?
Yeah, I mean, it gets really heated because a lot of people's like bags are on the line, and I think a lot of people like a lot of their net worth is tied up in these bags, whether it's V1 punks or crypto punks. So it can get very very heated, and a lot of people like to call V1s as a people like grifters or scammers. But at the end of the day, like V1s are part of CryptoPunk's story. Um, V1s existed 2 weeks before CryptoPunks. They were the first failed attempt of CryptoPunks, and that's what they are. And the market and you and the world can decide to value that however they want. But V1 punks were the punks that people minted. CryptoPunks that are the popularized collection today were airdropped to V1 holders. So those are just the facts. One came first and the other one came second. The popularized CryptoPunks are an airdrop. The original ones are a failed mint. And that's the story. And so for me, I wanted exposure to both. Both were published by Larva Labs. They are both legit. They both have the same cryptographic hash of the composite image of all the punks, but one of them has it first. And that's not to say like I'm a V1 maxi. Like I own both. I rock my V2 CryptoPunk as my PFP and my main face for the internet. And I personally don't think the V1s will flip the V2s in value. They right now are sort of tracking at like, I guess like a tenth of their value or something like that. Maybe it's a little more, but I think that's natural and I think that's okay. And I think they will always be part of the punk story. And to tell the punk story without V1s or to say that V1 punks are like scammers, I think is a little bit short sighted.
I hear you. No, it is part of the history and part of the story, which makes it so much more fascinating, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, maybe that's something that I could sort of unpack into some other future interviews as well. And then when you look at out into the space, do you have like a favorite punk personality or a punk identity that you really enjoy watching and learning from and reading?
Yeah, I mean, 6529, his threads are always super insightful. Whether it's like about decentralization or the open metaverse or just like some of his philosophies on life, I think he puts a lot of work into his threads, and he's an excellent written communicator. And so I absolutely admire the work he's doing, sort of as a thought leader in the space. And I know he's doing great things with his own like NFT fund as well. So um, yeah, he's definitely an inspiration for me.
Amazing. Yeah, I think he's is a common name that keeps popping up for that question. And if you were to describe punk culture in a few words, like what would that be?
Ooh, yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, I think it's a very curious culture. Um, it's a very curious culture. You know, you have people. Actually, I'd say above all that, you know, there are people that are very curious about Web3. They're poking holes in like, you know, what's really going on behind this like crazy speculative JPEG movement. But there's also people that are just in there from an investment perspective. What I think the punk community has is like conviction. Like the punk community has like an incredible degree of conviction around these historical OG NFTs. And they have conviction that these things will be valuable um, tomorrow as they are today, more valuable tomorrow than they are today. You know, at the end of the day, whether these people got in at $1 or came in at $150,000 a pop, it doesn't matter. Like these people aren't selling for whatever the value is today. And so that tells me that they believe in a greater tomorrow. And I think that's like a whole lot of conviction. And you could frankly say the same thing about any holder of any project. But I think the highest conviction people are the people that have held a project through all of the up cycles and down cycles. Like they've held their little token through all the winters and all the bull runs, and they're still here. And they're not just here; they're actually accumulating more. And I feel, and I can't necessarily back this up with data, but I bet it's true on chain. You have more people in CryptoPunks holding their tokens for a longer amount of time and increasing their holdings over time. Whereas other collections, you know, you have people entering and exiting because a lot of these collections aren't going to last the test of time. And so these people are trying to time what is ultimately a pump and dump of some sort. And so punk holders, I think, just have a very high degree of conviction, not just on CryptoPunks, but the space as a whole. And their conviction takes the form of a position in the CryptoPunk community.
Beautiful. Well said. And if you could pass on a message to the next owner of your punk, what would you like to say to them?
I would probably say, congratulations, son. This punk is going to my son, or my daughter. You know, I view this as like, you know, I'm Valko, first of his name, and like there will be a Valko second of his name, and it will be my kin. Valko.eth and Punk7642 are not leaving me and my bloodline. So the other punks, you know, I would say congratulations, glad the punk found a new home, kind of thing. But yeah, this is the beginning of a new legend, I think.
Beautiful. Mate, if I were you, I would check if Valko Junior is .eth is still available when you get off the get off the line.
Oh yeah, I gotta snag that before you publish the podcast.
Awesome. And any sort of closing comments from your side, and you know, how do people find you? How do people reach out to you? Any ask for help or anything like that?
Yeah, I think my Twitter is like my best hub. So it's just at Punk7642. My alias is Valko. I append that with a little emoji lightning bolt. It's like my favorite emoji. So yeah, just follow me on Twitter if you want to see cool threads. I post like 1 to 2 threads a week on NFTs, DeFi, and crypto, privacy, and just like freedom in the metaverse and on the digital frontier, with really like the goal of onboarding like the masses and educating the normies or the non-crypto natives. So if you're interested in that type of content or know people who are crypto curious, send them my way. And then always happy to have like a dialogue, whether that's like on a Twitter thread, Twitter DM, Telegram message, like whatever. Like I'm trying to crack the code on like what is the broader public missing here to have the same conviction and bullishness we all have. And that's a formula that I'm like really trying to crack and solve. And I don't view it as something I can like, it might be something I can formulate an answer to. But I really much view it as a collaborative effort. Like I need to study a whole lot of people, a whole lot of things, a whole lot of psychology to really help make this idea and this space stick so that we can reach like blockchain ubiquity and worldwide adoption. So if those things excite you, definitely follow me on Twitter and would love to have a chat.
Awesome. And I'll put your links in the show notes as well. But definitely I've had a lot of value reading a lot of your threads too. I mean, you write and craft really insightful threads. So thank you for doing that. But other than that, man, like I think that's a wrap for PunkCast for today. Valko, it was fun, really fun for me, and really really insightful for me to sort of hear your story. So thank you for joining us for today's session.
Yeah, totally. It was super fun. Thanks a lot for having me, Maxwell. Happy to be back on here anytime or do a Twitter Spaces together. You just let me know. I'm around.
Awesome. Will do. I'll definitely hit you up on that. But for now, everybody, thank you for listening, and I'll speak to you next week. Cheers. Bye now.